We want the farm to be here long term. And to be here long term, you need to be sustainable. You need to be financially sustainable, but you also need to be doing things that are going to be helping the land, helping the environment, and producing food in a really high quality manner.
In this episode of Voices from the Field, NCAT Sustainable Agriculture Specialist Katherine heads to Terranova Ranch in the central San Joaquin Valley of California to talk about conservation hedgerows with Don Cameron, the ranch's general manager and vice president. Terranova Ranch is dedicated to producing over 25 premium quality crops as effectively, productively, and sustainably as possible. They've implemented a wide variety of conservation and regenerative agriculture practices, including sustainable irrigation practices and conservation hedgerows. Since planting these hedgerows just 2 years ago, Don has seen a wide variety of positive changes at the ranch, including increased biodiversity, more beneficial insects and pollinators, reduced erosion, and increased aesthetic value. Let's listen.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Katherine. I'm a Sustainable Agriculture Specialist with the National Center for Appropriate Technology. And today I'm out here in Helm, California with Don Cameron on Terranova Ranch. Terranova Ranch is located in the central San Joaquin Valley of California. And today Don is going to be talking with us about some of the incredible conservation practices that he's employed out here. There are actually quite a few conservation practices that Terranova has in place, but today we're going to be talking specifically about hedgerows and a few wise water practices. And for those of us who aren't familiar with the term, hedgerows are defined by NRCS as dense woody vegetation planted in a linear design to achieve a natural resource conservation purpose. And just a few of the benefits include protecting water quality, providing shelter for wildlife, improving aesthetic value, improving air quality, reducing noise and reducing odors, along with a lot more. So today we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about all of those benefits and more. And I guess we'll start out. Don, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Terranova Ranch.
All right, my name's Don Cameron, and I'm General Manager and Vice President of Terranova Ranch. We're located about 30 miles southwest of Fresno, and Terranova's been in existence since 1979. And I have been here since 1981, over 40 years.
So as I understand it, you guys are growing quite a few crops, quite a diverse range out here. Can you tell us a little bit about what all you're growing and how big the ranch is?
Sure. So Terranova consists of different combinations, but we farm, when you add everything together, close to 9,000 acres. About 5,500 acres of owned land here. But we have partnerships, we lease land, we do custom farming for other people that really don't want to farm, so we jump in and do it. But yeah, we have a real wide variety of crops here, from almonds, walnuts, pistachios, wine grapes, to a lot of the row crops, fresh onions, dehydrated onions, carrots, processing tomatoes, a lot of different seed crops that we grow here, peppers, and we have about 900 acres in organic production as well as the conventional. So we have a real wide variety here. Pretty much everything you can grow, we have tried at one time or another here.
And what are some of the main challenges that you face growing out here in California, and especially in this part of California, which is so hot and dry? It's a very extreme climate.
So one of the main issues we have, and probably the majority of the growers in California are up against, is a dependable water supply. For us, we're in a critically overdrafted basin, and we're primarily groundwater pump water for the crops we grow here. So I'm involved in the Groundwater Sustainability Agency here. I'm the chairman, and have been really pushing forward for sustainable groundwater management within the area here.
Yeah, that's hugely important out here in California. And what are some of those sustainable groundwater practices that you're employing out here?
So, years back in 2008, 2009, we have converted all of our row crops to subsurface drip irrigation. We've seen an increase in yield and quality and a decrease in the amount of water we use to farm the ground. And when we used to just use flood irrigation and furrow irrigation, we would end up being short of water in the summer with the wells we had. and we'd have to leave the alfalfa dry during August to move the water to the other crops. Now we're able to irrigate all of the land and all summer and actually use about 25% less water than we did then.
Wow.
And we've increased production by over 25 to 30% in our canning tomatoes. So
That's amazing.
yeah, it was a real win for all of us here.
Yeah. How do you monitor how much water you're putting on? Do you have tensiometers, or do you use ET and ETC?
The way we irrigate here is we put irrigation schedules together that are based on ET. We also use aerial photos, NDVI, moisture stress, that are taken every week so that we can see if we have any issues in the crops we're growing, any stress or possibly over irrigation. We have become very, very efficient in the irrigation management here.
That's amazing. That's so good.
And actually, back when I first came here in 1981, we put in our first drip system on wine grapes. And really, all of our permanent plantings have always had drip irrigation. So, but moving into the row crops was a new challenge for us.
And I mean, it's great too. You don't water the weeds that way as much.
Right.
Which is another benefit. Yeah. And one of the other things that you do here is on-farm water recharge. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We, right behind us here, this is actually a levee that keeps the Kings River more or less channelized from here up to the Mendota Pool. And back in 82 and 83, we actually first began taking some floodwater from the North Fork of the Kings and using it in place of groundwater to grow crops. You know, since then we've really come a long way. In the 90s, we would capture about 15 cubic feet per second, and we would use that to irrigate for in-lieu recharge. But we also started flooding some of the fields to actually do direct groundwater recharge. And in 2011, we were able to get a small grant from NRCS, and we actually were able to flood growing crops and prove that we could do groundwater recharge in fields like the pistachios we have here, in wine grapes, in almonds, in a lot of the growing permanent crops, and be very successful in implementing groundwater recharge to rebuild the aquifer. Yeah, we were the first ones who started that in 2011, and since then it's really become a very great solution for California to become more water resilient.
Oh, yeah, and not many people know about that, so it's great to hear that you've had success with it.
No, it's been great, and the Department of Water Resources now has a FloodMAR program really based on the work we did here.
Oh gosh, that's so neat. You here at Terranova implement a lot of conservation and sustainable practices.
Yeah, we've done a lot of different things here to make ourselves more sustainable. From, we use about 35,000 tons of chicken manure a year on the farm.
Amazing.
We have 2 megawatts of solar on farm to offset our power consumption. So just a lot of little things that they all add up.
And what is some of your main motivation for farming sustainably?
We want the farm to be here long term. And to be here long term, you need to be sustainable. You need to be financially sustainable, but you also need to be doing things that are going to be helping the land, helping the environment, and producing food in a really high quality manner.
So you're doing a lot. You use drip irrigation, you're doing on-farm groundwater recharge, you are applying organic manure. But another thing that you're doing is you have miles and miles of these beautiful hedgerows. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We're here in front of some elderberries right now, along with a lot of other different species of hedgerows. So can you tell us about what you have planted here and a little bit about the why behind why you've planted hedgerows?
Sure. So these hedgerows were planted actually less than 2 years ago. They've really been phenomenal with the growth we've seen here. And the reason we did it, I had 2 reasons. One, we had real issues with the banks along this levee. Every time we'd have a rain, you'd get all kinds of water erosion, and we'd have to go back and rebuild. But really the other reason was we wanted to see if we could add some diversity, some beauty, some texture to the ranch, I live here, I'm here every day, and it's not just about producing the crop. It's about living here and making your life much more enjoyable. And really, this has really added a lot of texture to the ranch. I mean, it's great to come through here and see the flowers blooming. We're seeing all kinds of new wildlife that we have not seen in the past. We have hummingbirds out here constantly throughout the summer, which were really a rare sight. We've got milkweed mixed in through here. And in the last couple of weeks, I've actually seen monarch butterflies coming through our area here and visiting these plants. So
that is incredible. That's what we need.
Yeah, it's been a big change, and we're seeing quail out here, which we'd be lucky to see one pair of quail in a year, and now we have 50 quail that are living out in the habitat that we've created. So we built it, and they really have come. I mean, the pollinators are really intense out here. We have our neighbors putting their beehives near here now because they figured out that we do have pollen and nectar throughout the summer and the winter. But really, we've taken care of the erosion problem. We've added really a lot of beauty and a lot of diversity to the farm.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that we don't often focus on the aesthetic value that hedgerows provide or that other sustainable practices provide, like insectaries. But it really is just good for us as the farmers to see such beauty and to see other animals and fauna enjoying our farms as much as us. And also providing buffers to noise and even odors.
Oh, that's true.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have a lot of different operations nearby, and it's nice. This gives us a buffer, and it's beautiful to see. And we're really surprised at how well this has taken off and grown.
But part of that has to do with the way that you installed these plants. I know you really took care to irrigate them and to apply mulch. What would you say was the biggest difficulty with getting them established, or has there been?
I think our biggest problem has been the weed control, and we were very intense in taking care of this after we planted, because we knew that the weed were going to be a tough problem here. So we actually put crews through here about every 3 weeks to keep the weeds clean so the plants could survive and get ahead of the weeds. And then we came back and put a mulch down around all the plants during the summer, consisting of really chipped almond trees. So we were able to help cover the ground, conserve moisture, and prevent weeds by putting that here. And the plants just love it.
So was that your process? You cleared the area of weeds, and then did you put down mulch before planting, or was that after?
No, we put the mulch down after planting, and really after several cleanings with crews just to eliminate the weeds here.
And I know you irrigated too.
Yeah, I think the real key to this is we put drip irrigation here, and it pretty much runs at the same schedule as the pistachio trees we have behind us. We have it tied into that system. It really doesn't use much water, and as they become more established, we'll probably cut back and let these things slow down a little bit and produce the beautiful flowers that they produce.
Well, they look gorgeous now, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, we have other areas that they're a little smaller, but they're just every bit as beautiful. But we know that the habitat we provide here will bring other species. We've already seen rabbits out in here, and they really don't create a problem for our farming operation. We have about 2.5 miles planted now, with hopes of putting in another 4.5 miles. And really, we're incorporating part of our groundwater recharge project, which built about 4 miles of canals, into the project, because we have all these new canal banks, and we're going to be populating those with hedgerows. So it'll retain the soil, it'll create some beauty, it'll bring in diversity, and kind of highlight what we've been doing here.
Yeah. And going back to the pollinators that you've noticed as a result of planting these hedgerows, has that had any benefit to the crops that you're growing? Have you noticed any benefit?
Well, we know that the seed crops that we grow, we rely on bees And we've found that we have been able to not bring additional bees in on several of our crops that we've grown. We know that we're building up the native pollinators here. I mean, we've seen things that you probably never have seen out here before. We have bumblebees visiting. We have just a real wide variety of pollinators, including regular honeybees. I mean, when there's no other food around, every bee for miles will come here and feed. Yeah, you stop and just sit and watch, and it doesn't end. You get a ton of birds here roosting now that we never used to have.
What kinds?
Yeah, we get a lot of the sparrows in here that like to be close to the ground in the heavier shrubs here. We have phoebes. That's pretty wild to see what's moved in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to, I mean, you come out, I mean, you look at the bees. I'm working this right now. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's amazing. We're here in October and these plants are in full bloom.
That was one of the reasons we planted the diversity that we did, was to hopefully have bloom really throughout the year, so that we have plants that have different blooming periods, so that we don't just have one quick bloom and we're done. These are spaced out, like the elderberry. I mean, it's still got bloom on it right now. We've got other plants that continue to bloom throughout the year. I think it takes time. They have to find it. They have to be able to find the food here too. But I anticipate that we're going to see a lot more biological diversity in the future here.
Right, and some of that biological diversity, which we kind of touched on, includes monarch butterflies, which feed on a lot of the plants that you've planted when they're adults. And you've also planted milkweed, which is really important. For those who don't know, monarch larvae only eat milkweed, and monarch butterflies actually only lay their eggs on milkweed plants. And I know that you've planted a lot of milkweed out here, right?
Right. We actually have a patch of milkweed that's about a quarter of an acre in another part of the ranch. And we ended up producing 450 pounds of seed and gave it to Xerces to distribute throughout the western U.S. But we found that milkweed is a difficult plant to get started. We ended up taking the seed that we purchased originally to a greenhouse that supplies us with the canning tomatoes, and they did the germination. And we actually planted this area and had very, very poor results. We had a wildflower mix and milkweed, and the weeds just were so intense that they took over the plot that we had here. So we had to pretty much start over with the hedgerow, and the hedgerow has been very successful.
Okay.
But we find milkweed coming up in this area. So some of the seed we put in earlier has come up, but we found the best way to get milkweed started is get it in a greenhouse, or at least control the germination of the seed to where you get plants that you can transplant out into the field. It's been a lot better.
Yeah. And you've planted narrow-leaf milkweed in specific, right?
We have narrow-leaf, and we also have showy milkweed here.
Okay.
And then Xerces has brought us some other varieties that we've slipped in different key locations throughout our hedgerow.
Nice.
So yeah, we're getting a lot of diversity. Yeah, it'd be great if we had a lot of monarchs. Eventually they may be here, we'll see.
Yeah.
But we have a real diversity of other butterflies that come here. Plus the birds, we're finding in the evenings, the birds come here to roost. They feel safe. So really a lot of changes from what we had before. And they're all positive changes. So, that's why we want to do more.
And do you have any negative effects on your crop from the birds, from having more birds in the area?
Food safety is always an issue. And it's always a kind of a fight between food safety and having, a hedgerow or having native habitat, because you have to worry about keeping your crop clean. So far, we haven't had any issues. We've been really fortunate.
What are the other on-farm or ecosystem services that you've observed from these hedgerows? We've talked about erosion control. Do they function as windbreaks to protect the crops?
As they're growing now, they are beginning to turn into windbreaks. We also put valley oaks in our hedgerow here. So, in 10, 15 years, you're going to see big oak trees all along this area here too. We space them out, but I'm amazed at, number one, how well this has grown here. But even the Valley Oaks we put in, they were 1 or 2 foot tall. They're now 5 to 6 feet tall.
And how long ago was that?
That was earlier this summer.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So we've
That's
seen incredible growth of the trees and of the plants that we put in here for the hedgerow.
So it really is just important to irrigate when you're establishing them and mulch and keep the area weed free.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, we started this with a small grant from the Healthy Soils Initiative from the CDFA program. It piqued my interest. It was something I always wanted to try. That was enough to get me in to do the work. And I'm sure we've spent a lot more money than the grant gave us, but it gave us the initiative to go ahead and give it a try.
Yeah.
Which is really great. We worked with NRCS, we worked with Intermountain Nursery, which is up in the foothills, to determine which plants would grow well here. And there were some here that I really didn't expect to survive, have done fantastic.
What are the varieties that you have planted out here? I know that NCAT, when we delivered some hedgerows to you through our project, we gave out a lot of narrow-leaf milkweed, some Great Valley gumweed. I know we also gave white sage, California sagebrush, coyote bush, California buckwheat, definitely a lot of elderberry. I think there was some holly-leaf cherry and toyon too. Yeah, what other ones do you have out here?
We have some redbud down toward the end of this line here. The elderberry, I just can't believe how quickly it grew. But not only that, just some of these, the ceanothus, some of the other plants have just taken off.
And what spacing did you use? It looks like these are at 5-foot spacing.
Yeah, so I think what I learned, at least on this area here, was probably should have given them a little more room and spread them out a little thinner, but we had requirements of the grant that, as far as spacing, and we did double line here, hedgerow, but I anticipate that we'll get some windbreak as these get a little bit bigger.
Definitely.
And it's going to be benefiting, the surrounding crops and really keeping the soil in place and providing habitat for all kinds of creatures out here.
Are there any other things to keep in mind before planting hedgerows that come to mind?
I try to eliminate as many weeds as possible before you put the plants in the ground. Make sure you have a good soil structure underneath the plants. This levee used to be a very sharp levee. We actually brought dirt from the field and made it a much more gradual slope. And by doing so, we brought some pretty good soil from the field into the area. So we knew we had a good root zone. It was well aerated, it was loose, so that the plants really got off to a good start. I think that's the key. You really need to watch them when they're young and take care of them. Sounds simple, we do that every day in our field crops, but to actually think about this as something you really need to pay attention to is important if you want to be successful with it. You can't just plant it and walk away and hope it grows. The timely irrigation is key, especially when they're young. Water is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
I mean, we run into difficulties in an area that may only receive, 4 to 10 inches of rainfall a year. It makes it really difficult, and the last few years have been extremely dry.
Yeah,
so.
Which is another reason why it's so important to use native plants when you're planting hedgerows, because after the first few years, hopefully they won't require irrigation and you can kind of taper them off that.
Well, I think they'll require less long term. They'll become tougher. Their roots will be able to mine whatever moisture they have here, and they'll become more resilient. I'm confident that these things are going to be here for a long time. And it's amazing to me how quickly it changed. Really, to see it happen that quickly, I had anticipated it'd be maybe 4 or 5 years before we saw plants this size and the bloom that we have. But here we are in the end of year number 2, and these things are huge. My belief has always been plant small plants. For whatever reason, if you plant a smaller tree, you get away from any root bound issues, and you put it out there and it can survive, I think, a lot better. I mean, many of these plants were maybe 6 inches tall.
Yeah.
And like one little stick coming out. to watch them transform into this is just
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
I know the ones that NCAT gave, they were teeny tiny. They
Yeah,
were
very small.
But they, that's kind of what you need to get them established so they can adapt to their environment.
Right. One other thing too we didn't talk about, but Gopher Control.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah. Gophers can wipe your whole hedgerow out if you're not careful.
What do you do?
So we actually use traps, the little spring-loaded traps that we put in here, and we have some guys that are very good at capturing and killing gophers, because they can really do a lot of damage to your hedgerow. So I think there are a lot of small issues that you really need to watch.
Yeah.
And if you see an issue, take care of it early.
Oh, the gophers. Yeah, I remember I worked on a farm in San Diego, and that was one of my main jobs, was just capturing gophers.
Capturing gophers?
Yeah. There's a real technique to finding the hole and making sure that it's a fresh mound and all that. It's kind of a science, but if you get it right, then you can kill them.
Well, we have guys that are so good they compete with each other on how many gophers they kill per day. Like in our organic fields that we have here, and we put up owl boxes too to help eliminate the gophers, but they're not 100%, but they've really kept the pressure down out here.
Yeah.
And what about pesticides?
So one of the other issues that you have to be concerned with, you don't want to have a spray rig come through here when you do need to treat your crop, your trees, your vines, whatever you have planted nearby. You need to educate your employees. You need to turn off before you get to the end of the field, and turn on and make sure you don't have any drift going toward any of your plants, because you want your pollinators to be healthy. You don't want to kill the pollinators you're attracting. So
That's such a good point.
it's a real education for everybody on the farm, and you need to make sure that they follow the directions you tell them. And if it's not safe to spray, put it off for a day, because we know we do have to treat insects. We have quality requirements that we have to meet for our processors and our buyers. But it just shows you can do it, you can be careful, and you can have a wonderful hedgerow.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the other benefits to hedgerows that I don't know if we touched on is that when they do get big, when they become windbreaks, they can function to slow the wind and actually allow some pesticide application.
That's true.
During times of the year when it might be windy otherwise.
That's true too.
And that can be really good for precision pesticide application.
Right.
Yeah. And that's obviously when they become taller. Right now they're probably a little bit too short to have an impact to that
Right,
degree,
but yeah, we tried our upper row, we tried to have the ones that actually went higher, and the smaller ones down lower. But as you can see, everything did well.
It sure did. Gosh, but that is a really important thing to keep in mind, just taking care of these pollinators that have come.
Yeah, it really is great to see, everything you've done out here and all the ways that the biodiversity around here is being benefited, and all the ways that the farm itself is being benefited. It's neat to see.
It just adds a lot to the region. And we put the last hedgerow planting along the highway, and we did it intentionally because we want our neighbors to see what you can do to add to your farm, to bring in diversity, to bring in something other than just the crop you're growing. I know I saw a neighbor probably 15 miles south of here had done a small planting, and I liked it. Spurs the interest. When you see somebody else doing it, you're more likely to give it a try. And that's really what we were trying to do here.
Yeah. It really is neat what you're doing, and that you're also inspiring others to follow suit. I think it's really impactful. So thank you for doing this work and for planting these plants.
No, we're excited to see how this develops. Like I say, it's new to us too, but we feel good that it's come as far as it has.
And
really,
this is just in 2 years, so I'm excited to come back in 10.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, it's beneficial, and as farmers, we are stewards of the land. We care about what we do. I live here, and I like it. When I go out for a walk and I see what we've done, it's pretty impressive, to see you can make change. And yep, it does take some money to do it, but I think the rewards are really fantastic.
Well, thanks so much, Don, for having us out here today and just for doing this good work that you're doing. It's really been amazing to see. So thanks for having me out, and thanks for talking to us today.
Great to have you out here.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at atra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.